Welcome everybody, and thank you to be here. We are opening this session. We have the pleasure to present an inclusivity webinar inside the TransEET Twinning workshop in Turin. This webinar is introduced, first of all, by the presentation of the NEMAST toolkit, that is Network Knowledge Management Administration and Science toolkit. The agenda of today is, first of all, the presentation of the project, TransEET project. TransEET means transforming education with emerging technologies. And then some presentations about the promotion of diversity, the Network Knowledge Management Administration and Science toolkit, the NEMAST toolkit of project, and inclusivity and accessibility in the NEMAST. Some ideas about this important toolkit. After that, we will have the pleasure to have external invited people from the project. Chiara Giberti, she will speak on the international project fostering mathematical discussion beyond the borders. And Sandro Coriasco will speak of inclusion and accessibility in STEM, the laboratory for you. Now I have the pleasure to invite Professor Chronis Kynigos for the presentation of the project. Professor Kynigos is from the National and Catholic University of Athens. He is one of the maximum European experts in European projects and in doing research on the use of technology for the teaching and learning of mathematics. Please.
Thank you. So just a couple of words, and if you see me running out of time, please tell me to sit down, because the main subject of this webinar is inclusivity. But just to give you a sense of the context, I've been, as Ornella said, in more than 30 years in a history of a lot of failures and occasionally some success in European project life. And all this experience is gradually accumulating and is being fed into new proposals and new thoughts on how to address this multi-organizational life that we have in Europe. So in TransEET, what we thought to do was, I'm trying to go further down. Yeah. We have a kind of a coexisting double objective. One is to answer the call, which was on devising methods to generate sustainable collaboration between different research groups in Europe. So this is it reflects on the problematization that the European Commission has recognized, that it's not easy to get different research teams to collaborate in larger, wider research avenues. The second part was the objective of what we do, our joint expertise, which is about serving educational transformation. In a sense, this is a kind of how do you say, a specific perspective on what is going on. There's a lot of talk on digital transformation. So what we are talking about is educational transformation, and how we can use digital media to help us pursue educational goals, pedagogical goals that we know from the research and education world that are coming up as knowledge and where we want to lead our schools and our education sector. So One part of what we do is about the method with which we collaborate to come up with these new ideas, and the other part of what we do is coming up with ideas about how to employ emerging technologies and how to employ existing technologies to think about new ways of educational practice and new paradigms for schooling. So, you changing? Shall I change? Yeah. So, TransEET is about a lot of different things. Thinking about emerging technologies in education is not a solo enterprise. It really requires very different expertise and different fields to join together in ways in which have not joined before, in the context of providing service to educational transformation. So it's not the same as putting everything on the ground and creating connections, but it's creating connections with a specific goal to serve educational purposes and educational transformation. So these are some words that are about us. So with respect to the ways in which we collaborate, the ways that we convince the European Commission that we will have some value, was the way that we feel we can generate this kind of sustainable collaboration beyond the end of the project. In our field, it comprises of three main ideas. One is the idea of the formation of communities of interest. So this is a kind of a social engineering to create collaborations. Yeah, a community of interest is an idea that came from the world of interaction design and software development, and it's about creating communities of people based on diversity. So every member of the community of interest is to be perceived as being a member of a community of practice, but a different one. And the idea here is to generate mobilized diversity so that we can come up with creative ideas for education. The second idea is what we call flow of rapid prototypes. Prototyping comes from the industrial design world. In that world, a prototype is something very difficult to produce, and there may be some risk in producing machines and prototype machines. It may be very costly. So sometimes there's only one physical prototype. There's a lot of designs for prototypes. But because we are working with digital media, we have tools with which we can design and develop things in flow. So we use the idea of these media as expressive media, as media with which we exchange our ideas. So for us, a prototype is a way with which we can convey in an elaborate, specific, and precise, rigorous way an idea for education. And then we use this prototype as a mechanism, as an object around which we can discuss the development of this idea. And then it usually ends up in tweaking or changing the prototype and coming back again into discussion. So this exchange, we call it flow. This is a new word and a new perspective on how to think of prototyping and rapid prototyping, that it's part of and parcel of the way that we work. Yes, so a prototype is not, does not have a big stake at hand. It's not dangerous, it's not risky, it's not difficult, it's not costly. But we exchange prototypes all the time as part and parcel of what we want to design in the end. And thirdly, because we engineer difference and diversity, what happens is that in order for diverse people, we have a mathematician, we have a mathematics educator, we have a sociologist, we have a developer, and we want all these people to really deeply connect with each other in order to design and develop a new idea for education. And they have different histories, they have different different epistemologies. We have people coming from normal science, people coming from post-normal science. And we need to find ways to communicate with each other so that we can then work together collectively. And this communication requires, to some extent, understanding where the other comes from. So we call this hybrid expertise. I'm never going to be a sociologist, for instance, but I need to understand enough to be able to communicate with one in order to understand how to generate collaborative learning for mathematics. Yeah? So the main idea behind coffee method examples is, for instance, we design and develop media behind which we embed the idea of sorting, classification, the idea of functions in mathematics and covariation, the idea of having students design artifacts, having embedded mathematical ideas in them, and in that way generate mathematical meaning, but also develop competencies in mathematics. These are some of the things that we do and develop. And these are examples of prototypes. As you see, you might recognize some mathematics just by looking at the pictures of these things, but they are dynamic media that are designed for students and teachers to do things with them. And these are the prototypes around which we discuss. So we thought it was a good idea just to give you a sense of what this media do, because one of the problems that we have and we are discussing is how we can analyze human activities with this media, where there's a significant part of this activity is the dynamic physical representation or replication of what's going on, so that we can explain where mathematical meaning comes from. And you cannot do this on the text or on a piece of paper, so we have different methods that are emerging. One of these are these micro video clips that you click on the paper text through a QR code or through a kind of a link, and they give a sense of the dynamic of the situation. But then again, we need more ways to be able to explain the history of how the people came to this event and what the meaning of this event has with respect to what they do. But just to give you a sense, here we in mathematics, we have users, kids, moving their hands, and the movement of the hand moves the variability of mathematical objects that we have built before through programming. So what they do in effect is they use this dynamic manipulation in a symbolic way to connect this variability with periodicity and with music in this kind of sense. So this is a new way of engaging with mathematics. Here we have a representation of a mathematical object, which is based on augmented reality, so it's based on things that we can sense and we can see and the computer reads. Here we have another dancing with a mathematical representation, so we have whole body movement affecting what goes on the screen, but what goes on the screen has embedded mathematical ideas in it. So we're giving different avenues for students to generate mathematical meanings. This is what we're trying to do. So that's the idea. It's promoting diversity and promoting connectivity and discussion in order to come up with creative ideas. And through the TransEET project, it seems to be working. There's a lot of magic happening, a lot of different ideas, and mainly a lot of people engaged in what they're doing and planning of what they're going to do after the end of the project. So this is already a very healthy element that somehow something's working through this method. So we are now engaged in trying to objectify, trying to reflect on how we are implementing the method and what other values and what other ideas we need to consider while we're doing this, one of which is how can we make sure and how we can create new educational paradigms in an inclusive way. So this now is now the time to invite Andrea Ghersi to start the discussion on inclusivity in this kind of context.
Thank you very much. To introduce Professor Andrea Ghersi. Andrea Ghersi is a teacher, researcher who works with our university, the department, and the group of mathematics education. And Andrea is an expert in using technology in the school for the teaching and learning of mathematics, and he is also an expert on inclusivity, because he worked in a special way with projects directed to include every kind of student.
Thank you very much, Ornella. Thank you, Professor Kynigos. We talked about the project, and we are also talking about the promotion of inclusion as a value for us in projects, but also in common life. So why do we talk about inclusion? And what does it really mean, this word? It refers to diversity. Because when we listen to this word inclusion, we think to people with disabilities, maybe, or we think to people that we perceive as different to us. But is really a problem? What are we really talking about? As all the aspects of the human life, as everything that is on earth, inclusion has its history. And that history is related to the way societies face the problem of differences and the problem of the diversity. And diversity has often been the target of prejudices, stereotypes, and biases, we can say today. And it's also brought to persecution. And in the centuries, humankind defined slowly a way to embrace various kind of different ways to be on Earth that we can call normality. But we can start thinking about what make us different to others. We can be different by age, we can be different by nationality, by culture, by ideology, by religion, by gender. Okay, many of these aspects are actual. We can talk nowadays about these topics, and but they were also very relevant in ancient age. So this is the main reason why we should look at the past to understand in which way we want to interpret the word inclusion nowadays, and in which way we want to understand what can we do now, what we can do in this century, and in the future, what are the next steps we need to continue this developing idea of embracing everyone, but maintaining the value of the difference. We can start from the very ancient ages, thousands of years ago, when in the ancient Greece and in the ancient Rome, the legends about the Mount Taygetus and the Tarpeian Cliff tell us that childs with diversities or people with some kind of disablement were killed. Okay. We can talk about this age as the age of elimination. The problem of diversity was solved by eliminating the differences physically. Okay, and that there is a reason for this fact, because in ancient ages, society grew up thinking about promoting the value of strength. They needed to be, they needed armies, for example, for the fights, to control the territory. Okay? And there was also no way to have a kind of medical system and welfare in the welfare organization to sustain people with some kind of issues. In the Middle Ages, also, this kind of attitude continues. We know by pictures and also by some papers that in the north of Europe, at the beginning of the spring, all the people considered mad, considered dissidents or in some way dangerous to the establishment, were carried on ships, and this ship was sent in the seaside, in the ocean, until the death of all the occupants of the ship occurred. And this was a way to preserve the establishment, to preserve the power. Okay? Always with the focus on the physical elimination of dissident people who were considered different and also disabled. But then something started to change. The change begins in the Renaissance. During the Renaissance begins the phase of exclusion, a phase in which disabled peoples and people with issues or people considered dangerous to society are considered unable to participate in progress. They are considered social enemies and also a ballast that obstacles the well-being. And for these reasons, they are no more eliminated, but they are confined in asylums. This is the period of history in which the first kind of prisons was born, but people considered different or people with disabilities were forced into jails as thieves, as robbers, as criminals, in the same place. Something started to change during the Enlightenment age, in which people with disabilities and people considered abnormal in some way are now sick, no more enemies, but people with disease. And so this is the reason why first asylums start to be specialized in the treatment of disease. No more prisons, but hospitals. The first hospital. This is the age in which the first nosocomium was born, the hospital for madmen. And the Enlightenment helps society to understand the value of science and the value of research also, so that people with disease, from sick, from unable to participate in progress, become sick people. And also object of study and care. Study from the research point of view, and care from the society point of view. And also, this is the period in which we see the birth of the first corrective intentions, the first prosthesis, for example. And also the age in which begin the insertion in the job place, for dedicated in an exclusive way to people with certain kind of disease. For example, blind people, deaf people. Also, the first educational system organized to embrace the presence of students with disabilities. This is the age in which we see the birth of the first special schools. And then we arrive to the 20th century, in which we see a kind of fight that is not really a fight in which there is a winner and a loser, but there is a kind of relation between the power of medicine and people who are trying to be and the people that medicine wants to take care. Okay? Why this happens? This happens because we see the birth of the idea that the problem is no more on the disease itself. The problem is no more on the sickness. The problem is no more in the individual. But maybe the problem is also in the way the society is organized. That is exactly what happens when we talk about the medical model and the social model. When we talk about the medical model, that is the traditional way that is sustained by the exclusion paradigm and the segregation paradigm, in the medical model, I would say, people think that the disadvantage derives from the decrease or the loss of the ability to conform to the world. So the reason for the problem I feel is only mine. It is my problem. It's the problem of the individual. And medicine is the way we can find a correction. Medicine is the only organization that can manage that problem, because you have to be you have to adapt to what the world around you asks to do. This is the idea of integration. Integration means that an individual has a problem, and there is an organization that we can call medicine that has to face that problem, giving you the tools to adapt in the better way to what the world is asking you. But maybe society doesn't take into account your needs. You have to take into account the needs of society. Okay? In this paradigm, we can see the birth of the idea of the compensatory tools. Okay? And integration is the frame in which compensatory tools live and have their place. But thanks to the fight of a group of people with disabilities, whose name was the Disability Studies, we have to thank Mark Oliver, an American disabled man who fought to sustain the idea of the social model. That is not the only problem. It is real. Medicine is very important. Research is very important. Tools are fundamental to help the people do the things that they have to. But society is also important the same way, and with the same way. Because in the social model, the disability and the diversity is not caused by my issues, by my physical problem, but also by the way the society is organized, the way society take into account the needs of people with disability, the needs of diversities. So, when we talk about inclusion, we talk about that. We talk about the need to design environments in which we want every kind of specific situation people can face are taken into account. This is, for example, in this context, for example, was born the ideas of barriers, architectural barriers that have to be that we have to overcome. For example, an architectural barrier is overcome to let every kind of people access to a place, because the main aspect of inclusion is in fact participation. They let people participate and have the possibility, the opportunity to have a job, to access to the educational system, to make their dreams come true, anyway, as everyone wants to do in his life. And many times, I think you have seen these pictures, these images. That is a summary of the steps in which that humanity, that humankind has walked to come from exclusion and to arrive to inclusion. Okay? And it is really important to look at these pictures and to understand that we are not only talking about sets and the circles, but we are really talking about the colors of the dots. Because colors of the dots are the criteria that we use to discriminate, that is, to identify what is common, and what is different, the other colors. Okay. So the color of the dots is an obvious criteria for discrimination. And if we say this sentence, I think that we all agree with that. Okay. But there is a big risk. Because can we say that diversity among people, if the colors represent people, are an obvious criteria for discrimination in group? It has a completely different sense. This sentence is completely different from the other. Okay? So, how to face this problem, this risk? How can we do it? Okay? First of all, we have to talk about it. We have to inform our teams, our colleagues, the people that we know about what really is inclusion, what inclusion really is. Okay? And then we also have to understand that diversity and differences are very relevant to the next step that after inclusion will come. We don't know. Inclusion is we are in the time of inclusion. We hear about inclusivity and inclusion in a lot of contexts. But what will come next? Something is moving, and one of the answers is belonging. That is that idea, because I recognize my team and the diversity among the team, among the members of the team I am working with. It can be, the team can be a family, can be colleagues, can be an organization. And I give value to these differences because I recognize that the differences make me grow, and the differences make other people grow. And I suppose that this is something that we already heard about before. Because if you, let me remind another picture we have already seen before, talking about the actors of didactic expertise and the coffee method. These two pictures are really similar. And in fact, we work in the inclusive way, that is, we come from different communities of practice, we give value to other differences, we try to fill the gaps that we can detect between us, and then we evolve, we develop both as individuals and also as teams, becoming a community of interest and not only a single community of practice. And this happens in research, And the research context, it is one of the main fields in which barriers are destroyed, because simply we have an objective to follow, okay? And it is not true that we don't care about diversity. We care a lot about diversity, because we know that the diversity is the strength we have to understand the other point of view, and to understand how can we make our projects survive our work, the end of the agendas in which we are working, and hoping that not only our products but also our way of working will survive and will be the heritage to the next generation. And that is so. This is the reason why we think that the Nemaster toolkit is so relevant, because it is the way we can explain to others how to sustain inclusion and how to replicate this way of working, taking care of all these aspects that we are doing. So, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Now we know that the Nemaster toolkit is designed in order to have also inside inclusivity issues that we want to communicate elsewhere. Now we have Cristina Greca from the National Catholic University of Athens, and Cristina will. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much. Cristina is a young researcher with Professor Chronis Kynigos, and now she will speak about next one. Okay, the Nemaster toolkit. Thank you very much.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to talk to you a bit on about how we, the TransEET project, operationalize these ideas about inclusivity. The main thing that we do is that we try to create a toolkit, the Network Knowledge Management and Administration and Science toolkit, the Nemaster toolkit, which will be basically an open access toolkit for everyone involved in research and science. PhD students, master students, researchers, professors, and project managers. And it will include guidelines on scientific networking and project management, as well as sustainable exploitation of digital artifacts with emerging technologies for education. It will also report on best practices about scientific networking and project management, and it will also include a gender equality and inclusive guide to design and implement twinning activities. In order to build this toolkit, we evaluate carefully and critically the way that we work according to the coffee method, as described earlier by Chronis. What we do in twinning activities, for example, the first example is that we closely evaluate how we run a workshop with diverse members in groups. We group people with diverse expertise in order to join in activities, hands-on activities, with authourable artifacts that are meant to be used for educational purposes. So we try to implement inclusivity principles in these hands-on workshops that we do. The main principle here is that we use authourable tools where different members can change them according to their preferences and their expertise. So these artifacts work as boundary objects as living artifacts with which we can share ideas and create common understanding about educational principles, but also our research interests. These workshops are organized, as I said, based on rapid prototyping activities. We also use supporting material, which we try to be as inclusive as possible in order to support teamwork. And the result of these workshops is the creation of artifacts that have collective meaning, meaning that they express these different expertise and different views on how to design something for educational purposes. Another aspect where we try to integrate these inclusivity principles have to do with the management of the project. We use accessible project management tools. An example can be Slack. These kind of tools offer accessibility in terms of keyboard accessibility, animation preferences, visual controls, but also audio and video options, meaning that they are supported with accessible technology. Another point regarding the project management is the equal participation of genders in the administration of the project and the management. We closely evaluate how different participants experience, benefit, or are excluded sometimes from twinning activities. And we collect good and bad practices, aiming to develop a gender equality and inclusivity guide to designing and implementing these networking activities. Now, we also apply inclusivity principles in our website. Here is a presentation of the NEMAST website. Some things that have been applied there are, for example, the color contrast between background and text. So for better readability, alternative text for images, and consistent flow of elements to allow easy navigation without a mouse or other pointing device. Another aspect about being inclusive has to do with the artifacts that we design. Because of our different expertise and our different backgrounds, cultural, scientific backgrounds, we try to make artifacts that express collective meanings and different points of view to see the learning content. These artifacts, these educational resources that we design are freely online available. For the design, we use expressive media, which means that we use technologies that we call constructionist. They are authourable. We can easily change them and modify them in order to express our own personal views. And following our students can also modify them in order to express their own preferences and backgrounds. These media also offer multiple entry points, which means that they can express a wide variety of content. So students with different preferences can participate in their own unique ways. They are also, as Papert has said, technologies with low floors and high ceilings. This means that they allow high level of expertise, high level of digital literacy, for example, but they are suitable also for students and designers that do not have so much experience in designing educational content with digital technologies. And we also apply personalized learning and flexible pacing as allowed by these technologies that offer these low floors and high ceilings. Of course, regarding the educational material that we design, there are many challenges that do not allow us to make them directly accessible. which has not been proven an easy task to do, since many accessibility technologies like voice recognition come with issues of privacy and personal data. For example, voice recognition has the voice is personal data, so we cannot integrate it as easy as we imagined in our digital resources. In addition, there is still an important gap in accessibility in the internet in many regions, and also there is a teacher training gap both in inclusivity and the design of digital educational materials. So these challenges are what we work on in order to improve the artifacts in order for them to be more accessible. So this is what we do in the context of the NEMAST toolkit. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Cristina, for this presentation of the toolkit. We can understand how much we are trying to reinforce in order to be inclusive. And now we have the pleasure to invite here as a speaker Chiara Giberti from the University of Chiara is an assistant professor at the University of Turin, and she works in mathematics education, and she is an expert of gender gap and inclusion at the gender level. And so she will speak about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this invitation. It is really a pleasure and an honor to be here, and also a little bit great to be here today and to speak with you. And today I'm going to present some reflection that we made on an international project that we developed in the last years. And so I will present also on behalf of many other people who collaborate in this project, which was called Fostering Mathematical Discussion Beyond the Borders, and it was founded by the EGPA Special Project in 2023. So within this project, we have to face many challenges due to the international collaboration, of course, because we were teachers and researchers from 4 different countries. So from Canada, David Wagner, Cody Anderson, and Kate Witters participated into the project. From Italy, Ferdinando Artarello, Silvia Bertamino, Giorgio Bologni, Paolo Cattaniga, Mia Licelemmo, Eugenia Tarto, and Sara Gaido. From Israel, Osama Sweden, Sara Bagossi. She was there at the beginning of the project, but she's in Italy right now. And from Argentina, Monica Esther Villarreal and Veronica Marchesini. So we had to connect these different contexts, and the aim of the project was to develop, to go one step further, starting from previous work that we made using Padlet to support the mathematical discussion within the classroom. So we already made some experiments on mathematical discussion based on the use of Padlet within the classroom to collect students' ideas and to share the ideas within the classroom. And in this project, we wanted to promote this a comparison between this new type of mathematical discussion mediated by this digital platform which was Padlet. Also developed in different cultural contexts, and of course fostering the collaboration both between researchers but also classes from different nations. So we had to face many challenges within this project, and we had to face different levels of networking, and we also see that the different inclusivity practices were needed to face all these challenges. So we had to face to use these inclusivity practices and to develop them during the project, considering scientific networking between researchers from different contexts with, of course, different backgrounds also and different theoretical lenses. The collaboration between teachers and researchers within each national team, but also within in the international team as a whole. And we also have to consider inclusivity practices from the students' perspective, and so considering both student inclusion within each classroom, but also in the connection between pair of classes discussing together using the Padlet. Okay? And I also wanted, of course, to say thank you for all the effort given by all the members of the international team. So how was it possible to face the challenges due to the necessity of networking between researchers? First of all, we use a Padlet. The project was on Padlet to promote the discussion, and so we use also Padlet to collect all the ideas, all the reflection coming from the meetings. These were the recording of all the meetings with the main highlights coming from each meeting. And we had our schedule in this Padlet, and all the materials were organized in this Padlet. This gave us the possibility to overcome some practical challenges due to the networking between researchers from strictly different nations, so with different time zones, for instance, and it was not always possible to have everyone connected in a synchronous way to the meeting. So we had also the necessity to collect all the reflection, all the ideas, all the comments, and all the outcome of the meeting in a single database. So the Padlet became our database, and it was also a way to communicate between all the members of the international team, also in an asynchronous way. And now the experiment, the project is concluded. We talked about the sustainability of the project in the previous intervention, but Padlet is still our database and an instrument which is really useful for the sustainability of the project, because we are now working on the data that we collected. So the project was finished and the experiment were concluded, but we are now working on all the data, and we are still working on this issue and collaborating within the international group. So we had to face some practical challenges also due to the differences of the different contexts in which the experiment would take place. And so we had two experiments within the project. The first one was a pilot study that gave us the opportunity to understand better the features of each context in which we were moving, and then to redesign the activity itself to go to the main study. So all the networking between researchers and the challenges that we had to face within the international group were founded on the idea of that there was a UNED effect, as Professor Andrea said. So we have different paradigms that can exist and coexist, and identifying these paradigms and their interaction help us to understand and guide mathematical work. This is of course true for mathematical work, but it is true also for mathematics education. And also in this project, this was a way to see the different perspective of our team. So we have to consider that what we see is not always seen as someone else sees it, and by reflecting on what the other says he, she sees, new ways of seeing emerge that we hadn't thought before. So Professor Aldarello suggests us to reflect on this aspect and call that the UNED effect. So to understand the mysterious object A, which in our case was how a mathematical discussion based on problem-solving activity could develop within the class. You have to put yourself in the place of another object B, which you know well, and ask yourself, what is A like from B point of view? So following this direction, we had also to compare our ideas and to reflect on the different theoretical lenses that we would use to analyze the mathematical discussion within the classroom. So each national team reflected on if and how to analyze the data at a national level, of course, but then all these ideas have been shared within the international team. But we also decided to focus on one common theoretical lens, which was the Stein model, which was proposed by Alice Lemmo, to analyze the discussion. Why we had to choose one common theoretical lens? Because it was really useful in the phases of design and redesign of the activity, because the Stein model it provides a justification for the use of Padlet, and it is focused on teacher, which was our focus in the design and redesign of the activities. But we also think that all the other theoretical lenses that have been proposed by the members of the national team and will be proposed also in the future, I think, will be really useful to analyze the data coming from the second experiment. So we had also to share our ideas, our main way to see some specific concept of mathematics education, which were crucial for our work, of course. We were talking about mathematical discussion, and in particular mathematical discussion based on a problem-solving activity. And one of the main discussions that we had, and that took it lasted more than 1 hour, a lot of hours, was what problem to choose for the second experiment. And it was really a big decision, because it was not so easy to find the right problem to promote this discussion, asking classes from different nations to collaborate one with the other. So the question the doubts that we that raised during the meeting were which mathematical content is coherent to different curricula and school period. Because, for instance, the problem was proposed at the beginning of the school years for all the nation except for Argentina, which was at the end of the school year. So it was really different. And what is the impact of the problem translation in the different languages, of course. And also which problem could promote a significant discussion within the classes, but also between the classes. So what would be the motive for the international dialogue between students? And this last was the question that we discussed really a lot. And so we collected all the proposals from the different members of the international teams, of course, within a Padlet, within our Padlet. We commented all the proposed problems, and then we voted to find the final problem. So networking between researchers, but all the networking was between researchers and of course teachers, because the international team was of course composed by both teachers and researchers, and teachers were involved in all the phases of the research and in all the meetings. It was possible for all the teachers involved in the project, except for Lisa, which was the Israeli teacher who didn't speak English, and she didn't have the possibility then to participate to the meeting, but she had the possibility to read all the information within the Padlet using the translator, the Google Translator, and she had the possibility to write her opinions and her comments to what was written into the Padlet, and we had the possibility, of course, to read what she wrote using the online translator. Of course, this required a deeper support from the Israeli researchers to give all the information to the Israeli teacher. So the teachers were the core of our team because their effort was fundamental, not only to propose the activity into the classes, but in all the phases, and in particular to explain the specific features of the context which were collected into the Padlet. So for instance, the different number of students, we had really small classes in Canada, for instance, and bigger classes in Argentina, or the didactical practices that the students were used to face during the mathematics lesson, which were really different within each context. The period of the year, I just say that Argentina was at the Argentinian classes were at the end of the school years, while the other has just began the school years, and also the different possibility to use technological devices that were necessary for our work. Teachers were fundamental also in the discussion of the problem that we had to face in the first and in the second experiment, because we had to choose a problem that was challenging but also coherent with the different curricula and with the different school year. And they reported their reflection on how the experiment goes and work into the design and redesign of the experiment. So without the effort of the teacher and the crucial role of the teacher, it would not be possible to understand the interesting variability within classroom and countries, as well as amongst the classroom and countries, of course. So during the project, we collected many reflections, many information, many also practical guidelines on how to promote this experiment into the classes. And we collected all this information and reflection within a single document, which grows thanks to the collaboration of all the members of the team. This document was the pedagogical orientation and guidelines document, and we understood that this document that had the first aim to support the teacher within the project could be also useful to support the teacher also outside the project. So we collected all this information within this document. And finally, of course, the networking and necessity to find inclusivity practices between researchers, teachers, but also between students, because the main aim of the project was to promote a mathematical discussion between students from different nations, thanks to the Padlet. So this mathematical discussion was made possible, of course, by the technological tool, which was Padlet, also using automatic translator and so on. And of course, thanks to the international collaboration between the teachers, because they had to organize the experiment, also considering the timing of each phase of the experiment to exchange the Padlet and so on. But we also see that cultural sensibility is always needed in this kind of project, because we observe a threat that we didn't expect to the international collaboration during the Padlet exchange and the discussion between Italian and Argentinian students. Because the Italian students choose one of the nicknames of the group, which was Puro Sangue Inglese, and the Argentinian students consider this nickname as offending, because due to the war conflict that Argentina had with England in 1982. But of course, Italian students didn't know of this episode, or they said, of course, that the reason for choosing this nickname was another reason. And so there was a communication between the two classes, mediated by both the teachers, and the Italian students wrote an apologize letter to the Argentinian students after this episode. So just to conclude, we are now working on the single data of each class of this project. And so I will report some hints, some highlights on inclusivity practices within the classroom from previous work, because we saw that the use of Padlet to promote mathematical discussion within the classes could be an inclusive practice due to the fact that the use of Padlet helps students and teachers to overcome the main obstacle due to an excessive effort given to this kind of mathematical discussion to work in memory and executive function. And then in this way, Padlet and in this way to orchestrate the discussion within the classroom help in having a wider participation of all the students to the mathematical discussion, also thanks to some specific features of the Padlet itself. For instance, the anonymity of the posts and comments, the time customization that gives all the students the time to reflect, to write their hypotheses and to comment on other hypotheses, and also give different means of communication and expression, because within the Padlet, students can write their own answer, or they can use audio recording, video recording, pictures, photos of their notes, and so on. And we also see that the use of Padlet in this way help the teacher in enhance the divergent hypotheses emerging from students' perspective and a positive culture of error. So this is all. Thank you very much for your attention. I would like to thank all the members of the international team for the big effort given in the past and also given now. And thank you, Sarah, for helping preparing this presentation.
Thank you very much, Chiara, for the presentation. For the presentation of this interesting project. And now we have last but not least, Professor Sandro Coriasco from the University of Turin, the Department of Mathematics. He is a professor in campus, and he is also involved in this laboratory for him, especially devoted to inclusion, of particular kind of inclusion. Now, please, Sandro.
Thank you very much, Ornella. Thank you very much, everybody, for the opportunity to be here and to present some aspects, give some hints of what our work in the laboratory consists of. So, first of all, let me say that our laboratory is devoted, in particular, to research and experimentation of technologies, assistive technologies for impaired people, particularly in the environment of STEM topics. So we started some years ago. Now the laboratory is established here in the Department of Mathematics of the University of Turin. This was due to the enormous effort put into this work by Professor Andrea Ghersi. She is the leader of the group. She was joined almost immediately by our technician here at the Department of Mathematics, Dr. Then there were many people involved here, some remained, some went in other universities and chose different topics, but somehow we all remained in contact after the part. I joined some years ago now, some time I'm working here. I started by trying to develop solutions for visually impaired people to access them. It was one of our first focuses. But actually, we then realized that certain technologies were actually possible to be employed successfully, not just by impaired people, but then also from people having special educational needs or learning disorders, say, Italian. And actually, that this can really be employed by everyone, which are some of the technologies I will present later on. I hope I will be able to convince you that actually what maybe starts, as it happened already in the past, for specific needs, actually can be really employed by everybody. So just to complete, our staff is made for mostly of people who actually give their additional time to get standard work in the activities of the laboratory, with only a few exceptions. And we also cooperate with the colleagues from the computer science department here at the university, which show at the end some picture of who we are. Our inspired principles, our main guidelines for our work, deal with particularly these two laws, the Marrakesh Treaty and the European Accessibility Act. So both of them, actually, one will be more focused on accessibility of documents, especially in the scientific area, is one of the first things, one of our first motivation to start. And then the European Accessibility Act actually enforces the principle that accessibility is not a part, there's an opportunity. Really, another step towards inclusive society, inclusive, especially in education, and possibility of accessing the highest level of education. And that's exactly what I was saying before. So the idea is that when you experience these solutions, actually one realizes that this can be used by everybody. And one of our strengths, I'm really convinced about that, is that some of our workers are themselves impaired people or people who learn this work. So not just designers, but users. So this was really something we could really get a lot of good hints about. So these are our main, some of our main activities. So in particular, promote research and disseminations about this development and experimentation of technologies, in particular in the STEM fields. Also cooperate with teachers in making experiments in schools and universities, how to employ and how to improve the performances of such systems. And also, this was also something very important, to try to make people in the broader world than just academia or schools, really in the activities of the industrial or administration, whatever, about the fact that people with disabilities can really be successful. And actually they can be really an enrichment, as it was saying before. Before starting telling you about some of the solutions we also developed ourselves and started developing prototypes. So let me also say that we in the group have different expertise. So we are mathematicians, researchers, with mathematics, as I said before. We are computer science people, we research with science, teachers, and mathematical educators, and experts in education and mathematics. So as I said before, in our experience, this is the only way to face such kind of difficult problems, to try to get around different experiences, different abilities, and to try to put a common effort in developing solutions that can really then be truly employed. And also, our experience says that employing of technologies actually changes our way of perceiving the mathematical objects and their presentation, the way we teach them. So this is also part of our researches. So not just technology, but really trying to have a broader view of all the aspects that are involved, that are impacted by what we are developing and testing. Most recently, actually, we are dealing not only, but specifically with the technologies based on sound and voice. This thing that you see there on the screen now is a system which is able to record a lecture and to produce the later text. So as you can easily imagine, for textual stuff, that's not easy. We can only record and that the text of our speech just by a very simple smartphone methods. Math is the point, you see. That's the difficult aspect. So to have something which is able to recognize at some extent at least what you are describing by a formula or by proof of a theorem, statement of a theorem. That's the technical challenge. So this was one of the first things that this was supported also by the University of Turin. In principle, this can be employed, can be asked for by any of our colleagues, any teacher can have it and try it. This is another aspect, the Novograph project, going with our colleagues from the science department. I mean, all of this is done, but this is specifically looked at by Alessandro Mazzei and Felice Palestrucci. This is a system which aims at giving textual description of, say, graphical objects. This chatbot that you see there, and of course the examples are in Italian, sorry for that, that's another aspect of what we are doing. Some of these technologies exist maybe in English language. This artificial intelligence has a lot of materials which is in English. Italian, of course, they see it must be taken care of. So here you can ask the machine to describe you textually, say either an object which appears in computer science or in physics or in mathematics, like the graphics, and to have an interaction with a machine that actually tells you in text what this thing is, to enrich its accessibility. SpeechMate is one of our last projects. It's an editor controlled by voice. So we had a prototype of this years ago with some functionalities. So the idea was to make, especially impaired people which have motor disabilities or even visual impairment, to be able to do math by themselves. So not with an assistant who actually could write or read for them, but really be able to manipulate formula of cognition. So something like dictating, that's the first thing. But then also to be able to perform full computation. So something like take this term, the first line, copy it, change it into a simplified fraction, something like that. So this was actually supported by a crowdfunding campaign, which reached very well beyond our first aims and even beyond our most optimistic expectations. And this also produced additional support by the University of Turin. So we are actually involved in this moment in this project that, as you can see from there, already obtained a lot of interest by school institutions and so on. And we are actually now dealing a lot with these things. This is not the only, I mean, of course, in the time ahead, I cannot really present you all our products and what we experimented, just to give you some flashes of that, but also other tools based on the sound about the exploration of graph functions, giving different features depending on how the curve is shaped, and really be able to sense it. I will tell you something towards the end of the talk. As I said, we try also to work outside the academic environment for students, also in the secondary schools, and with teachers. So that's one of the projects we have. We actually have 3 editions of that. 2024 we actually have the 3rd edition of this. This is actually a way to inform people, particularly students, about the existence of these technologies. A Latin language, but it's just a way to put them in contact with some kind of environment about promotion of this culture of accessibility. So actually, again, another step, giving the fact that the feeling that inclusion is important. And also, of course, developing digital abilities and so on. And actually, as you can see from there, these results that we presented were actually selected in this Didamatica Conference 2022 as one of the best papers. This is another project about how to heal mathematics in alternative ways. And this was done with this aim by interviewing people, in particular impaired people, try to understand how they feel, how they construct the concepts themselves, how they deal with it. And this was done also in various ways, again, by tactile experiences and sound and so on. And again, led by possibly accessible technologies and so on. Yes, this involved people gathered both in mathematics and physics, so not just limited to math. Okay, just to finish, this is a picture of our group. Some of them are still involved, some went away, but as I said, fortunately, we all created, this was before, a community of interest, which has not vanished. Actually, we put it out in the world. Many people who actually keep up in dealing with these things and promoting what we do and continue the mission of promoting more inclusion. And as I said before, accessibility is really an opportunity, not just a button. Thank you very much for it.
Thank you very much indeed also to Professor Coriasco, and now we close this session. It was a session full of not only engagement of ideas, but also challenging proposals for the future. And so we have new ideas to develop in this project, but also in other projects as well. So thank you very much. And thank you to our support, David, of this session.